Hey, this is Notzer in the Tier 5 U.S. carrier, USS Independence. It's got 36,000 hit points. It has 3 squadrons with 6 planes each. It has 40 AA guns, and the setup I have is 1 fighter and 2 torpedo bombers. This is a completely different way to play the game, obviously. As you can see, it's a lot like an RTS, where you have units and you move them, and you can either attack move, which in this game you can press Alt and it'll give you an alternate way of dropping your bombs. You can drop in an area versus on a target. You'll see an example of that coming up. I see that these 2 battleships are kind of gonna come together, so it's a good, this right here is an example of Alt. I'm attacking an area of the ocean, not a ship itself, and I'm also using a stacking technique. My fighter is engaged with the enemy fighter. I use it to kind of intercept his counter to my torpedo bombers. I hit 7 torpedoes on the first one, and I look like I'm gonna miss. Oh, that was close though, but I had a stacking technique for my torpedo bombers, and this is just pressing shift. When you have a squadron selected, you can get down and see the action. Anyway, whenever I had my torpedo bombers stacked up, I also brought the fighter squadron to protect them. I noticed that I'm going to collide with this battleship, so I again press shift to go into the real world view. And I slow down. Hopefully I'm missing. And I miss him. Good, good. And I speed back up. And I return to my operation. So, a carrier in this game is a unique vessel. Wow. Did I sink that battleship? He should have repaired the flooding. Whatever, I'll take it. So a carrier is, the eyes and the ears of your team. You can only have a maximum of 2 carriers per side, because probably the strength of the carrier, but also trying to display all the squadrons at tier 10, because carriers start getting like 6 and 7 groups, squadron groups. It gets a little insane. There was a funny video where some guys had a training and they just had all carriers, and the game was like, crashing. Basically, it was so bad how many aircraft were in the sky. But you early spotting for your team, and you can take out isolated targets like battleships who choose to go away from their cruiser and destroyer support. And the advantages that this perspective gives you is you can provide information to your team through moving your aircraft around the map without putting your team at risk or yourself at risk. At the end of the tier, you start getting an inventory of like double or triple the aircraft you can actually deploy, so losing a squadron is like nothing in-game. See this cruiser, he's putting himself in a dangerous position, and if I was a better carrier pilot, I would have aimed this better. But whenever you're going parallel with an island, you are almost giving yourself no room to escape. And I didn't lead the target, I missed my torpedoes. He's going into a destroyer. Maybe the destroyer will drop torpedoes, I don't know. There's an enemy torpedoes trying to drop on that friendly battleship. I send my fighter squadron to take it, but it doesn't stop the damage, and the battleship takes what looks like 3 or 4 torpedoes. But the American carriers, their squadrons, they have fewer squadrons with more fighters. So I would say their advantages are they're better at fighting other carriers, especially Japanese squadrons, because Japanese squadrons have less fighters in them. And they also are more durable to get and scout in an area where they're taking fire, because they have more aircraft. They can afford to lose a couple. I noticed that a friendly torpedoes that guy. That's pretty awesome. It's a real close game. I mean, both sides have lost 5. This is not good for me. My fighter squadron is 2v1 on the enemy carrier fighter squadrons. So I'm going to lose that squadron, and a battleship is right underneath. But I think I'm giving spotting information because I think the aircraft are the only one in line of sight at that precise moment.
Problem solved, sir.
Enemy bomber just bombed me, but I repaired. I'm vulnerable now, and I would say that the bomber, which is the 3rd class of carrier plane, it's best used on battleships or carriers where you take away their ability to repair a more devastating attack, like a torpedo flooding or a massive fire breaking out on them. Like right now, bombers are just not as good as torpedo bombers, in my opinion. Aim at this battleship. I use the Alt button to set up not only an attack in a section of the ocean, but also a more concentrated attack. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah! Pincer move between me and that destroyer. You take out that battleship. So we haven't lost any ships in the last minute or 2. They've lost 3 more. So the battle that was equal is now in our favor. And I'm just watching the single fighter, shoot at this torpedo bomber. You could see that like the animations are a little janky, like it's not actually like looking at the target and firing. The aircraft system in this game, it works off of like a percentage of damage is calculated to occur to your aircraft when it enters a region of AA, and that region of AA can be multiplied by multiple vessels, and the amount of each ship AA that's going off. So there's different ranges that AA becomes effective. For example, in Independence, it's got 3 different forms of AA. It's got a long-range AA, which is like 3 kilometers, and the other 2 forms are short-range that only come online at 2.1 kilometers. So this fighter is trying to kill my fighter squadron. I'm trying to get close enough that my AA is shooting at it, and not until now am I at full strength AA-wise. But you could just see how much DPS carrier AA is. It's a great strategy to run back to your carrier or another friendly vessel and hide your aircraft over Finland. Sure enough, the torpedo bomber drops 2. I am piloting this from this perspective. If you press shift, it's treated just like a regular vessel at this point. And that's pretty close. It wasn't going to kill me, most likely, but it could have damaged me and made me more vulnerable to another attack. So my carrier, along with my fighter, was able to take out that squadron that was hounding me. I wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't for the carrier. So one of my torpedo squadrons needs to land, one of my fighter squadron needs to land. I send out my remaining torpedo that has ordnance. generally I would say that you want to have your ability to do damage to the ground, especially in a scenario where you really aren't at threat of dying to torpedo bombers. So you want to reload. Precedence should go to the torpedo bombers, get them rearmed before you land your fighters. But a carrier is probably the most unique way to play the game because it's just so different, and it's also the biggest varying degree of skill I've seen. I've seen carrier players where they wipe you out. I've seen them get like 5-6 kills, kill like 30 fighters in the air, and yeah. I mean, they just. And then I've seen carrier guys where you don't hit a thing. You do nothing, absolutely nothing. It's just one of those. And this carrier, he is so boned. Between me and the destroyer, I'm gonna land at least 1-2 torpedoes. Oh no! Don't! Oh, I almost hit that friendly destroyer. Oh! I hope I didn't kill him. You notice he dodged my torpedo, and it put him closer to the carrier. Oh, poor destroyer. But anyway, the skill gap is so extreme. This is just like any RTS, StarCraft, Dawn of War, Company of Heroes, where your ability to multitask is really what's at the skill here. If I am controlling all these squadrons and it just is amplified at a higher tier, where you're controlling 5 or 6, you can't, or you shouldn't stack them. I'm stacking them because I'm a bad player. But a squadron has plenty of damaging potential just on its own if you aim and you predict the tendency of the enemy. So we see that the last remaining carrier and the last remaining cruiser are all the way in the back. I have a torpedo squadron that's close. I'm totally out of fighters, so I only have 1 fighter in the 1 fighter squadron. A tendency I've seen that carriers will beach themselves, or they'll be close to an island to prevent torpedo attacks and enemy shells from coming in off one side. This cruiser could choose to turn towards me and get within the arm range, but it looks like he's not doing any of that. And I screw up my attack, I reset it. You kind of need to be going straight at the target in order to get it to launch correctly.
Taking fire.
And this looks good.
Standing by for instructions. Over.
2, 3, yeah. Take out that enemy cruiser. And again, I use the Alt button to aim on the ocean and not target a vessel. It just gives you more control. If you have a good aim, you should be able to kill them easier with targeting the ground. And you notice the indicator looks different because I'm down in my squadron. I think the idea is that you don't have your squadron leader for precise bombing, so you're more inaccurate. That's my thought on why it goes from widespread to narrow. So I'm just moving forward to cap. They only got a carrier. There's no threat from guns. Plus, this allows me to rearm quicker. I think down the line, when we're better at carriers, and say the Japanese carriers are in the game, I think teams will be more inclined to have the carriers closer, so they can support the front quicker. And Japanese carriers will have a faster rearm, and they'll also have better concealment. So I think those two advantages are really going to make it where you start seeing carriers be more involved in the battle flow. Just trying to rearm. Game's pretty much over. Just want to see who kills the carrier. So. I really feel like there's not enough people playing carriers to justify just fighter groups. I've done it before, and the second you load in and there's no carrier, you're just scouting. That's all you're worth, and maybe cap body. But it's just too important right now with the low population to go into a game and not be able to influence it if you do not get a carrier for your 3 fighter group, or 4 or 5, whatever. So he's behind this island. I'm trying to do like a 90-degree turn, and he dies. That's the way the game. I hope this carrier gameplay gave you guys some insight on how to fight carriers and play as carriers, and I'll catch you next time.